Hello and welcome to Sweet Spot DFS. This is a 2019 Travelers Championship review video where Chez Reavie is your winner. This is Chez's first victory since 2008, and it couldn't happen to a nicer player. Everyone on tour says, he's a nice dude. A lot of people like him, so I'm going to take their word for it. Sounds like he was deserving, right? Let's get into the spreadsheet and kind of look at the top 10 and just go over what we kind of talked about in the preview video and some other new things that we didn't really discuss. First and foremost, I did get some feedback about the last year and last week bucket system and or just really the bucket system. And I'm going to be creating a video later tonight, kind of going over the bucket system and kind of like what it means, the purpose of it. So hopefully that'll alleviate any confusion going forward. And I should do a better job explaining that in the preview videos going forward as well. But I want to get into the top 10 here. And actually, you know what? Let's get into the recent form tab. I want to show you the optimal lineup. The optimal lineup had these little black tick marks here are the optimal lineup. The blue here, the ones that are highlighted, are the $5 GPP winning lineup, and we'll get into his lineup soon. But optimal lineup had Chez Reavie, Keegan Bradley, Zach Suker, Vaughn Taylor, Paul Casey, and Kevin Tway in it. Kevin Tway squeaked out points over Neiman. He had 3.5 more points, although they finished the same place. It just means that, I think Tway had one more eagle than Neiman did, and the difference, and I don't know, there's probably more to it also, but I'm pretty sure that was one of the main stats or one of the main scoring points that Tway had over Neiman. But looking at the optimal lineup, how do you get on those golfers? You had to leave $4,000 on the table. That's difficult to do, and I don't anticipate anyone doing it. I will say the bucket system can get you onto those golfers. It gives you a reason why you would want to leave $4,000 on the table. And I'll play into that a little bit when we look at the DK page, but it's easy for me to say because, no one left $4,000 on the table. The winning lineup left $600 on the table, but they didn't have the optimal lineup. And actually, let's look at the optimal. Okay, so the optimal lineup had 655 points to it. That includes Zach Suker, which nobody owned. I'm pretty sure no one owned. No one in that $5 GBP in the top 10 had him. So you can guarantee you that if anyone did have him, they had a pretty terrible lineup. The $5, the winning lineup had 619. So really, he missed out on the optimal lineup by 35 points. That means, the rest of us, we could have won had we had the optimal lineup. That's all I wanted to talk about with the optimal lineup. You can see, recent form average of the winning, or the top 10, the top 5 wasn't the greatest. And then last week, obviously, wasn't that great. And even when you look at the top 5 of last year's scores, not terribly great. I mean, there's some top 10s there, some top 5s, or a top 5. But going back to the spreadsheet, let's talk about some of these stats, some of these these headers here, and whether or not we should be looking into them going forward, or how important they were for this week. Let's just go from columns left to right and just talk briefly about them. Salary to me doesn't matter, especially when you look at the bucket system and creating lineups, from the bucket system. I don't care about salary. As long as it's under the salary cap, that's all that matters. The starting hole is very interesting to look at. It looks like everyone started on hole 1. I don't know exactly what that means. I didn't look at the course breakdown. Perhaps what this means is the back 9 is tougher than the first or the front 9, and golfers who started on the back 9, at least for Thursday's round, did not have an advantage, and maybe due to weather just made the back 9 even that tougher. That and any golfer, let's talk about golf for a little bit. When you start out really slow, it's difficult to get it back. You kind of have to slow everything down and grind. You know, if you've fallen behind, say you're 4 over after 5 holes, I mean, you have 13 more holes to play. So in those 13 holes, you can think of at the end of hole 5, I need to shoot 2 under, 3 under, or, you know, you get a little bit crazier and say, I need to shoot 7 under because I want to be under par. You need to be under par. Well, think of it this way. You can either go, okay, I need to get 2 under and grind the rest of the way, where par is the absolute worst score you want to make. And if a birdie comes your way, then a birdie comes your way. Or you can say, I need to shoot low and technically, quote unquote, press, and try to fire at every pin. Well, what ends up happening when you press, for all those golfers that do that, you know, there's a betting game where you press and stuff like that. You can get yourself into some sticky situations, especially if there's some tricky pins or some sucker pins where they're either cut right behind a bunker or a drop-off area or something like that. If you go pin seeking and you miss your target or you miss on the wrong side, you basically bring in bogey or worse. You would have to have a great up and down game, and that's probably what happened. That's all I can think about with the starting hole. And maybe it's something to look forward to into the future, where we look at kind of the course breakdown and just see, you know, golfers who've played this tournament before, you know, what was the scoring average on the front 9 as opposed to the back 9. I mean, it is something to look into. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that much analysis when it comes to creating lineups, but for this week, that's very interesting, as well as the starting time. So Thursday's tee time, you see 4 golfers, 4, that had a morning tee time. The rest of them had afternoon tee times. And if you did watch golf Thursday or Friday, Thursday's round of golf was pretty hard. And you know what? When I first looked at this, I thought to myself, oh, no, Thursday morning's round of golf was much easier than Thursday afternoons. And so was Friday morning. So the tee split, because how these tee splits work, if you haven't figured it all out already, is a golfer, if he golfs in the morning on Thursday, he's going to golf in the afternoon on Friday, or however I said that, Thursday, Friday. And then likewise, if a golfer has an afternoon tee time Thursday, they're going to have a morning tee time Friday. That kind of keeps it somewhat fair to the golfers, although when weather shows up on Thursday afternoon and continues on through Friday morning and then kind of dissipates Friday afternoon, that will be unfair for those golfers compared to the morning afternoon split. So I actually thought it was going to be the other way around, where Thursday morning score, I think after Friday's round concluded, I think the golfers who had a Thursday morning tee time were more in the top 10 than the afternoon. But either way, so we see the afternoon tee times actually were much more beneficial in this week's tournament. And I always used to, or what I've said in the past is I like to pair golfers up together. I don't think we actually have, we do, Jason Day and Paul Casey. So if you went with the Jason Day, Paul Casey stack and then filled in the rest, could have been pretty good. You could do this pairing with anybody, honestly. So I don't see anybody else that really was paired up together. All right, so Chez Reavie was with Kyung Hoon Lee, and I liked Kyung Hoon Lee. So really, if you would have paired those 2 golfers up with Jason Day and Paul Casey, you were pretty darn close to having, winning lineups all over the place. So it's interesting to look at that. Odds, I don't so much care about odds. The bucket system doesn't care about odds, so I don't care about odds, really. Points per game, it's nice to look at, try to find golfers who, if we were to sort by this to find the golfers who had the most points, you're going to find nobody in the top 5 until Paul Casey. You have 2 golfers here, 2 golfers out of 11 that finished inside the top 10, and then 2 other golfers that finished inside the top 20. The rest of them, you didn't really want to play. So really points per game didn't really matter. Same also goes with value. Already looked at this. Like, out of the top 12 golfers, you have 0 people that finished better than 36th. So value is a nice number to look at to try to get a confidence rating on somebody, like your own personal confidence rating, but it really doesn't matter when it comes to creating lineups. Vaughn Taylor, that's a decent points per game, but really we want to look at value to try to find if someone was mispriced. Like Jason Kokrak is kind of he's coming off of something. I can't remember if it's an injury or if it was a personal matter, but he was coming off of something. And maybe that's why we didn't want to play him. I played 0 shares. I think I played 1. But yeah, he wasn't someone that I was really on this week. But we want to look at salary. Basically, man, I guess the best way to describe this is trying to find an above average golfer who has a value of about 1 or better. You'll see a lot of that in the major championships because it's more of a soft pricing than it is a hard pricing like these other tournaments. But Adam Hadwin, I liked his value. I liked his points per game. He missed the cut. So value isn't a very good tell as to who's going to do well. It's just a feel-good stat to have. If we go to course history, and I'll go a little quicker through these. Best course history was Paul Casey. He continues his course history streak. So for him, it worked. Did not work for Russell Henley. It kind of worked for Ryan Moore. He obviously scored better than his course history, or worse than his course history is. Same applies for Brandt Snedeker. A lot of people were on Charlie Hoffman this week, and he missed the cut. I don't know what's up with Hoffman. He had a good showing not too long ago, and now it's followed up with some poor showings. I kind of was on Hoffman this week. I was really on Leishman, so it was nice seeing him. I was very skeptical of Brendan Steele. I just didn't know how well he was going to do this week, and I mean, 21st isn't going to make or break anybody. So it would have been a good cut maker, but that's about it. So there's course history. Recent form. Now, recent form is looking, the last 7 weeks of tournaments. You could obviously go and kind of look at recent form for the last 4, last 5, last 6 events and make up your own recent form, but I like to look at the last 7 weeks. And it's just, again, not the greatest tell if I cherry pick my stats again. The top 9 golfers, you only had 2 that finished inside the top 20. And if I were to average this number out, you get 50. So 50th place is what the average was for the top 9 golfers in the recent form stat. Now, Chez was right behind him, and so was Vaughn Taylor, Paul Casey, and Jason Day. So it is something to look at. It's just not one stat to kind of, go all in on. And if we were to go through the recent form tabs, you would see, so that this is this week's tournament. You can see no one had a better recent form than 30th. And if we go 2018, you're going to find a lot of golfers in the same mark. 2017 is also going to have the same stats. And that's why I have all these recent form tabs, is to kind of go through here and try to see if I see any similarities. And obviously the similarity is 30th. But you don't see like right here. So 15, 14.25, 10, 13.67. Like, we don't find those golfers inside the top 10. So that's, why I don't put a lot of confidence in looking at the recent form. I just like looking at the buckets because I think last week and last year matter a lot. And I kind of figured that out sometime at the end of last year, where it was easier to kind of go by those stats than these. So anyways, that's recent form. I'm going to hide these columns here, and we're going to talk about the Pete Dye and POA splits, because that was what I was very much on this week. Let's sort this by result, and boy, this is what happens when you have your hotkeys binded to these letters and you have a cell in there. Overall Pete Dye. That's unfortunate. I wonder what the heck it was. Anyways, that just baffles my mind. Let me go to the lineup construction and find Kevin Tway. Sorry about this, guys. You'd figure I'd have this stuff figured out. There. All better. So we're looking at Pete Dye stats here, and we see the events, how many events these golfers have played at a Pete Dye golf course. And then we follow it up with their overall finishing position and how frequently they found the top 10. As you can tell, Pete Dye stats didn't quite matter this week. I mean, if we took the $5 GPP winning lineup, so all of these in the light blue, what you'll see is just about all of them had good Pete Dye stats. All of them but Chez and Vaughn Taylor. Vaughn Taylor was just a throw-in. He was a golfer that just, hey, why not? He's a pretty solid player. I like playing him in a lot of my tournaments. So it was definitely beneficial to play him. Same applies for their 2019 stats. I mean, none of them were awful. A lot of them were kind of in the middle, but that's still better than, 85th or just anywhere over 40, or I should say over 50. So Pete Dye, we can make the argument that it didn't matter. We could also make the argument that it did matter. Obviously, the $5 winning GPP lineup had good Pete Dye golfers in it, minus Chez Reavie. And then we can also look at POA. So maybe you're just like, instead of going, I want good Pete Dye and POA golfers, you just go, I want, 3 or 4 Pete Dye golfers and then 2 POA golfers. Because if you went that route, Chez Reavie had a nice, 34 POA events. Of those 34, he finished inside the top 10, 11.76%. So that's definitely a good stat. And then obviously the rest of these golfers here, it's pretty phenomenal how their stats. So it looks like POA mattered a bit more this week for this tournament. I'm not sure. I haven't done really the analysis going backwards to see if it was really more important with POA, but for the 2020 Travelers Championship, we can come back to this video and say, you know what, POA mattered more. Let's focus on POA. So definitely POA mattered. I'm going to unhide and then rehide because I want to go through the other stats, and I want to show you my ownership of these golfers just so you know what golfers I was on. I'm going to hide this too because this is just the rank based off of the field. And it's not going to really matter. I kind of want to see this more so than the rankings. So let me go over just slightly to get the last year bucket in there. Okay, so everything's on the screen. Perfect. So as you can tell, I played 127 lineups this week. Some of them were duplicates, so don't mind that. But of the 127 lineups, I played absolutely 0 Chez Reavie. I also played 0 Zach Zucker. So of the top, 2 of the top 3 golfers, I played absolutely none of. That's not good. I put in, I think it was $28, and I only won 10. So at least I got some back. And the ones that I got back had no Chez Reavie in it. So that, I don't know. It wasn't good. I don't know why it wasn't on Chez. I couldn't tell you. I didn't have anything really against him. I just don't think he popped out to me. But, looking at his stats, he has plus stats and everything. I just didn't play him because he had a last week bucket of 4. And last week bucket of 4 were golfers that finished inside the top 20 of the US Open. It isn't the last week's stat is just the last week. It was whatever tournament was prior to this tournament. That's what falls into the last week. And for this tournament, last week was the U.S. Open. So I looked at the history. If you remember the preview video, I looked at the history going back to 2013, and all but 1 year, Travelers Championship followed the U.S. Open. And of all those years, golfers who finished inside the top 20 didn't do the greatest at this tournament. I think this tournament is actually grabbing a little bit more popularity, or it's gaining more popularity. And I think we actually have more golfers that come from the U.S. Open to play in this tournament, because the highest stat, the one that I was going for, was having a last week bucket 1 golfer. So, looking at ones within this column, the last week bucket. That was more important. That means the golfer did not play. If we go back to the preview video and look at the matrix, the ones were golfers who did not play the week before. So that's why I wasn't on Chez. I didn't think somebody who was in the top 20 of last week's tournament was going to be inside the top 5. Let's see. I'm going to pull up. Actually, let's just look at the notes. There we go. If we look at the top 5 matrix here, now this is on the notes tab of my spreadsheet. If we look at the top 5, this number actually changed because there's 2 more here, but you know what? I'm kind of an idiot. I should have looked at this and thought to myself that was a pretty good score. Darn. Well, disregard what I said, because I must have missed that somehow. 7 golfers. What was the next one? That was also 7. Okay. I think I actually had this as a 2 and this as a 3. No, I had it as a 4 down here. But well, shoot. The finishing inside the top 20 is going to be a ranking of 2 next year. So obviously it showed up pretty well. There you go. So yeah, it showed up really well for this week, but okay, going forward I'm going to use it. I was a little distracted there. Going to the other golfers here, we had a lot of 1s, and you probably could have created a lineup with enough of these 1s to make it worthwhile. You would have found 6 golfers. You would have created a lineup perfectly with all 1s in the last year or the last week bucket. So if you went the route of I only want to play golfers who did not finish inside or who didn't play last week, you could have found your way on some of these golfers. Now, you would have been absent of any of the top golfers like Paul Casey, Jason Day, Bryson DeChambeau, Patrick Cantlay. Like, you would have been absent of those golfers, and that would have been impossible to do. Like, logic would not have dictated that you would have, you should have went that route, and especially your main guy isn't going to be Zach Sucher. So it's something that we can say now in retrospect, but definitely couldn't have said it then. But yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Tee to green was a stat that we were really heavy on this week, and all but Von Taylor had really good tee to green stats. Again, Zach Sucher doesn't have any stats. He hasn't played enough events to garner enough stats. In the tee to green spectrum, we really wanted really good off the tee stats, and only 2 golfers really didn't have the greatest off the tee stats. And Kevin Tway is a very good driver of the golf ball. This year he's just been a little bit erratic off of the tee, where he just doesn't hit a lot of fairways, so his scoring's been pretty low. So that's something good to look at. We can see birdie or better percentage didn't really matter. Green indicates they were top 20 for the field. Yellow is 20th to 40th position in the field. Orange was 40 to 60, and red, the light red, was 60 to 80, and then anything above that was the dark red. So we do see a lot of light green up here. That means they're top 20 of that stat. And again, like I said, tee to green mattered. Off the tee was something we kind of indicated mattered in the past, and it looks like it kind of matters still. Approach was a big one. Green and reg stats were pretty good too. So definitely something we could have looked at, and we kind of did look at. Proximity was also really good too for the golfers inside the top 5. But as you can tell, I had a lot of ownership of some, these golfers here in the top 10. 4 of them over 20%. I think that's a pretty good number. Followed that with like Fleetwood, Cantlay I had a lot of, and I had a lot of Mark Leishman. So Mark Leishman had kind of a rough Friday round, I think. He was at 6 under at one point in time and dropped back down to 4 under, and then just kind of grinded the rest of the way. Kevin Kisner is a Pete Dye specialist, so it's nice seeing him up there. But I didn't do too bad. If we go down to the missed cuts and look at some of these golfers that I had ownership on, I played a lot of Adam Hadwin. As you can see, I didn't play a lot of Jordan Spieth. I just didn't care for him. I had a lot of Lucas Glover. I shouldn't say a lot, but quite a bit. But you don't see many golfers that I went 20 or anything over 10% really. Tony Finau, I did think he was going to be good here. Oh, there you go. It's Charlie Hoffman. Like I said, I played quite a bit of him. I was definitely into him, but no more. I mean, Adam Hadwin sunk a lot of my lineups, so it's unfortunate. But yeah, that's all I wanted to go through with all of that. So, the swing metrics, some of it, I mean, tee to green was the main one that we wanted to go with. But again, I'm not a huge proponent of swing metrics. I more or less care about the last week stat, and that kind of showed, kind of gave a good reasoning why. My highest lineup was 496 points. You cannot see that, so let me move this around so you can see. So 496 was my highest, and then, well, you can see Nick Watney, Vaughn Taylor. Like I said, I like to play Vaughn Taylor, like to sprinkle him in every once in a while. I thought Nick Watney was going to be really good this week. Same with Ryan Moore and Mark Leishman. And Russell Knox, I just sprinkled in a little bit, but I was definitely really high on Patrick Cantlay. So with that, I am going to bid you adieu. I do want to thank you for watching the video. If you have any comments, please leave them below in the comment section. Otherwise, you can tweet me at sweetspotdfs or email me at sweetspotdfs@gmail.com. Please leave a like if you liked it. Subscribe if you like the content, and I will see you in the next video.